Really excited to welcome my guest today. This is Helen O'Neill. Helen is an EMCC accredited future of work coach who specializes in working with people who have or aspire to portfolio careers. She's a five-time published author and founder of Coach Right, where she helps professional coaches turn their expertise into published pages. Helen, thank you so much for your time today.
Hi, Claire. Really good to be here.
So we did have a chat way about a million years ago in December.
In December last year. It does
I
feel
might
like a million years ago, though,
be
doesn't it?
slightly prone to exaggeration, when we first started having a little chat about this. So I know about you, Helen, but for the people who are listening and watching, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself, a little bit more about portfolio careers, and maybe about how you got into the writing side?
Absolutely. So, my background was all corporate. So, I spent 20 years in big organizations managing big change transformation. So, it was really fast paced and really exhilarating. And I got to meet loads of cool people all over the world. And then, after a little while, I realized that if I was awake, I was at work. And I think we call it burnout these days, but it wasn't really a thing nowadays. But your body starts saying, this really isn't very sustainable. You probably need to start thinking about doing something a bit differently. So I have always been a word nerd and I'd always dreamed about writing a book. And so what I did was I found a job that was closer to home and it was senior enough that it was still engaging, but didn't involve 5 a.m. conference calls anymore. And it freed up about 15 hours a week. And with those 15 hours a week, I had to go at writing a book. And it was so much fun. I absolutely loved it. And I was like, brilliant. I have nailed my life. I'm going to manage change 35 hours a week and I'm going to write books in my spare time. And of course, the world had other ideas because then there was a global pandemic. And as many people found, I know we all had our different experiences through that time, but mine was I felt disconnected from people. And I started to find that the way of working just wasn't working for me. And I did what I think a lot of people did at the time, and unfortunately are still doing. And I opened way too many doors trying to work out what that next thing was going to be for me. And it was one of the directors that I worked with recommended. He said, coaching, you've got a natural coaching style in how you lead your team. Did you know you can get the qualification through the apprentice levy? And I was like, oh, who doesn't love a free course? So I spent 18 months doing my coaching qualification. And as I was going through it, I was like, this is amazing. I want to do this all of the time. And I decided to leave my job and set up on my own and to consider how I could make coaching part of my life. So I spent the summer setting up my coaching practice, bringing on my first clients. And funnily enough, setting up a business is quite a lot of hard work, as you probably know.
Isn't it?
And what I realized after that summer period was that I'd stopped doing the thing that I'd made my first career change to do back in the day, which was to write. And I sort of had a little bit of a chat with myself. I was like, how are you supporting your clients with living lives that are more aligned with their values when you aren't doing the thing that you set out to do sort of 7 or 8 years ago? Like, no, something needs to change. So I flipped my business model on its head and I wrote 2 books within 18 months and I put written content at the core of my business. And as often happens is when you start building a network in a new industry, people are going, how are you doing that bit, that writing bit? Like I'm quite interested in this writing malarkey. And so I was talking to all of these different coaches, and they were saying they didn't know how to get their words into the world. And I was like, oh, hang on a minute. There's a problem there that I've got to solve. Haven't I got to do something about that? No. And so Coach Right was born out of that. So Coach Right is the service where I support professional coaches with writing books. So today there are pillars to my business. I have my private practice, I have the Coach Right stream, and I still do some consultancy work in the change space to balance the three.
Yeah.
Because in this day and age, it's important to have diversity in our income streams, I think.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct. And in terms of income streams, how do you think, or what has your experience in terms of how a book can impact income stream, how it can be used in a very business way to not only get you out there as an authority in something, but also start to bring in extra revenue as well? What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. So, a book is something to be strategic about and
Mm.
to think about what you want to achieve in terms of service to your audience and also in terms of your financial goals. It I think we all dream of this world where we write a book and we win a prize and we make loads of money and we get big royalties and lots of lovely advances. And unfortunately, that world is for a very, very few people, most of whom already have an audience that they bring with them. For the vast majority of us, we need to be more thoughtful around how we generate income. So there are two main ways. The first one is, of course, royalties. If you choose to independently publish, as I do, then the percentage of those royalties is higher. And it's like any other investment. The more books you have, the more money you make, because people will read one and then they'll read another one because they like your style. And again, as a reader, we can probably resonate to that. You'll be like, oh, they've released a new book. I liked their last book. I'm going to buy that.
Mm.
The other way is the sort of more hidden way, I suppose, is it bringing people into your world. So as somebody that works in the coaching space or any other entrepreneurial business, something needs to stand you apart from your competitors as a thought leader. A book is a great way to do that. We all know people need to know, like, and trust you. And what better way for them to know you than to spend 2 to 7, 8 hours reading words that you've put together for them?
Yeah, amazing. And you mentioned there about independently publishing. Can you just explain the different types of publishing there are for anyone who might not know? Because I remember before I wrote my book, it was like, I don't know, I've got an idea for a book, but I don't know how to then get that out there.
Absolutely. So there are three main ways to publish: traditional, hybrid, and independent. Traditional publishing is what we all think of when we talk about publishing a book. It's the big five: Simon and Schuster, Penguin Random House, so on and so forth. So they're the books that we think of. They are normally, to approach them, you would need some sort of agent, and then they would kind of pitch your book idea to these big publishers, and they would decide whether or not your book fits their business model. So it's not necessarily whether your book is good or not,
Yeah.
it's whether or not it aligns with they have their own strategic aims too, right? So whether or not it aligns with them. It is notoriously difficult to get into traditional publishing, and they are enterprise organizations. So they are big global machines with
Mm.
big global processes that go alongside that. So there are definite benefits from going traditional. If you want to see your book in a bookshop, that's the easiest way to do it. If you want the kind of the sticker that somebody has said that your book is good enough, your book is worthy, then absolutely that's the way to go. And then there's obviously lots of subsections of traditional, so academic press and that type of thing too.
Mm.
Hybrid publishing is where an organization will do all of the publication work for you. So it's a pay to play environment. They can be quite expensive, but they will provide you with like an editor, a cover designer. They'll produce the book for you, but you still get the control. With those models, you do get the royalties, but of course the investment upfront has been higher.
Yeah.
And then with independent publishing, as the name implies, it's independent. So you are a business owner, and you will find your own team. So you might, choose to do some of the work yourself. I do my own formatting, for example, but I desperately value an editor. So I pay a professional editor to kind of proofread my book for me. And then you will put your book onto your Amazons, your Barnes and Noble, your Kobo, etc.,
Yeah.
wherever you want the book to go. So those are kind of the three main ones.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And that's kind of, I mean, I've kind of skipped to towards the end of the line a little bit, but I think perhaps for a lot of people, there is, because everyone says, don't they, everyone has at least one book inside them. But how do you how do you get that? How do you get your ideas? How do you decide what to write? And from that, how do you get started? Go.
Great question. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because in coaching, we say start with the end in mind.
Yes,
So actually, whilst we think that what we've just said is the wrong way around, actually it's completely the right way around. So start with
precisely.
how you want to publish, because that will inform your choice.
Yeah,
If you
okay.
want to traditionally publish, you'll need to put a proposal together before you write the book. So it's important that you know that before you write the book. Otherwise, you've written a book, a traditional publisher might say they don't want it. And then
Mm.
what do you do with it? Again, choices to be made. Um, I having ideas, they're like everywhere, aren't they? They're a bit like dust. Once you spot them, they are everywhere, or grey hairs, once you found the
I
first
don't know
one.
what you're talking about.
Maybe that's just me. They suddenly pop up everywhere. So actually deciding what to write is often the hardest thing. And again, I say that to people because I work with coaches. I'm like, so how do you help your clients decide on what goal they're going to focus on? Because deciding on what book you're going to focus on is the same process. I would say follow the energy. If you've got a list of book ideas and one of them feels like something you should write,
Mm.
and one of them feels like something that you want to write, go with the one that you want to write, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with that book. So you've got to enjoy researching it, writing about it, telling people about it, and reading it, because you will read it very, very lots.
Yes, and I mean, I know we talked previously off camera, so listeners and watchers won't know, but
Our secret
our
conversations
secret
offline.
conversation behind the scenes, and I mentioned that when I was writing How to Tap Into Your Happy, it just kind of flowed through me, which when other people say that, I find it vastly irritating. But I can remember just feeling really happy as I wrote it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it made the world a difference, and it actually got it done. So what is your own personal process, if you don't mind me asking? And also kind of what was it that made you go, goodness, I really enjoy writing. This is the thing for me.
Oh gosh. So I was the kid that always wrote stories when I was little. And I got a proper job because you get a proper job, don't you? Writing wasn't a job. Like when I was a teenager choosing my options, no one was like, oh, actually, you can be a novelist
Mm,
or you can be an author. So it was always a hobby that got put aside. And it wasn't until I was an adult and I realized that I could, make my own choices and independent publishing was a thing. And so they didn't need to be gatekeepers, that I could actually just do that and see where it took me. So that's where my love of writing came from. I think different people come to it from different places, though. Some people, it's the passion of what they're working on. So, like with you, for example, you had a personal transformation that led you to professional training, that then led you to writing a book about that in order to serve your community.
yeah.
So there's that natural follow through too. As terms of process, I also start with I have a list of ideas. I gather them. And I literally have a file called all the ideas. And you just because they're just everywhere. And then I'll be like, okay, so which one is going to be most relevant? So with nonfiction particularly, which one is going to be most relevant to my audience? So when
Mm,
I first launched my coaching practice, I predominantly supported people in career change, people looking at with non-traditional careers, people who had multiple streams of income within their careers. So it made sense for me to write a book about career change because I had all of this information, I was having all of these conversations, and actually consolidating that into a book that somebody could buy was the logical thing to do. Out of that book came a theme around this need for resilience. So I was starting to notice with the client work that I was doing and the research that I'd done for the first book that increasingly people are feeling like they need to be more resilient to make it to Friday. And
mm,
I was like, again, it comes about from you're like, oh, there's a need. that needs to be addressed. Like, how can we help people to reframe that thinking using research from today, but also research from history? You know, the Stoics have got quite a lot to teach us about not living crazy busy lives. So that's where this book around resilience has come from. And now, obviously, I support coaches writing books, and I am coming towards the end of the editing process for my current manuscript. And I'm starting to think, okay, what's going to be next? And I think, oh, it's going to have to be something that's going to be of service to the coaches that want to write books. Okay, so that idea is starting to germinate. So for me, it kind of becomes a process, one book at a time.
Yeah, awesome. I do want to talk about your coaching other people how to write a book in
Mm.
just a moment. But before I get there, because you've mentioned, you're independently published, you like to do some of it yourself, the formatting, you like to find an editor to edit it. So how do you, if you're someone thinking about writing a book, um, how would you go about finding an editor or finding a cover designer or a formatter, and why would that, I mean, to me, formatting, I'm like, why? Why? So what would you say to people to help them with that side of it?
So, first thing, like anything, recommendations are great. So,
Mhm.
if you know somebody that's written a book already and they've got somebody that they've worked with, that's an easy in. There is also a load of freelancers on the internet. So, there is a site called Readsy, which is like a marketplace for self-employed people that support authors. So you can find editors on there, you can find cover designers on there, you can find whatever you need on there, and they vet them all. So it's a bit like Check a Trade, but for
Yeah.
people
Okay.
that are looking to buy books. Obviously, you mentioned to me when we spoke before that you use Fiverr. There's loads of great people on there that provide services that are very inexpensive. So again, you pick your budget, you pick your level of support, you pick your level of comfort. And then there'll be things that you might choose to do yourself. So if you happen to be someone that's amazing at graphic design, you might choose not to pay a cover designer and do it yourself, which is
Mm.
absolutely fine. I don't have those skills, so I pay someone else to do it.
Yeah. Okay. And how do you, when talking about the cover specifically, how do you decide on the cover?
Oh, that's a great question.
I know
So,
you gave it to me.
yes, I did. What a brilliant question. I was very wise. So I recommend once people have got the idea of what they're going to be writing about and they've started to get through that process and can see their book take shape,
Mm.
again, starting to think about the end in mind. Where would you see your book on Amazon, on a bookshop? Where would it be positioned? What are other books that are like the book that you want to write? And what do they look like?
Yeah. Okay.
Because we do judge a book by its cover. And no
Yeah.
matter what you read, you will notice that there are, romanticy is a massive trend in fiction at the moment. If you go into a bookshop and look at the romanticy section, all of the covers look the same. So the
Mm.
same is true for any book that we write. And just create a bit of a mood board. Like, mine is not fancy schmancy arty. Mine is some copy and pasted covers on a Word document.
Yeah.
And then when I get to cover design, that will give you a flavor of the kind of fonts that are used, the colors that are used, any images that are used. And then you can use that as a basis to say, okay, well, actually, I kind of in my head, I'm starting to see something that looks a little bit like this. And you
Yeah.
can put a description together to send to your
Oh,
cover
nice.
designer.
I like that. And Helen, you've clearly been doing this for a while, because your knowledge on
Many years.
knowledge, I
I'm
didn't want
very
to be
old.
rude, but but your knowledge is absolutely phenomenal. And I find it really interesting that you started kind of not, if I heard you right, not really focused on helping people write books, but simply by having conversations with people, recognizing that there was perhaps a little bit of a gap in the market, a little bit of a need or a problem that wasn't being solved. So when you coach people on how to write a book, and I'm guessing it takes it all the way from conception to published. Um, I mean, what are the sort of the big worries or concerns that people have?
They tend to fall into three main categories: the
Mm,
writing of the book itself, the production of the product, and then the marketing.
okay.
So in the writing space, for most people, it's the longest form they've ever written. You know, even if they've done like a dissertation at university or something, suddenly it's like, oh my God, a book is like, what, 50,000 words? Oh my God, that's and it's not kind of something you can just sit down one day and be like, oh, I'm just going to bash out my book on a Sunday afternoon. So that's quite daunting, thinking about structurally how we can break that down in a way that's achievable, finding our voice, finding a voice that's authentic and is going to kind of meet readers' expectations. So that's the first bit. But most of the questions I get are in the second two. So like we've just talked about, like, how do I find an editor? What is an ISBN, you know, an international standard business number, which is the little number that goes on the back of all your book that you have to have. Well, no one tells you about that. So where do I buy one? How much do they cost? I need one for each format of my book. Okay. So that sort of stuff we can go through in quite a lot of detail. And then just like when you're running your own business, and the key question is, how do I find clients? When you've written a book, thousands and thousands and thousands of books going on to Amazon every day. So how do you get your book to be the book that people discover? And how do we do that in a way that's ethical and that is cost effective? So again, we talk quite a lot about that.
Yeah, awesome stuff. And I know you've got a new cohort coming up for Coach Write 90 in May, which I would like to find out a little bit more about in just a moment. But I think it might be remiss of me not to perhaps bring in a touch of AI.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yes, love it or hate it. You know, what are your thoughts on AI and how you can use it in a way to support you writing your book without necessarily having it write your book for you, and why that
Yes.
would be a bad thing?
It is such a derisive question, isn't it, AI at the moment? And obviously, we are recording March 2026. If we had recorded this when we first met in December last year, the conversation would have been slightly different, and the conversation will be slightly different in 3 months' time too. Personally, I have embraced AI from quite an early stage. Again, I've been fortunate to be in the independent author community, which is for the most part AI positive and has had voices that have been sharing information about how to use AI ethically for quite some time. So I feel quite fortunate in that sense. I also wonder that we're maybe starting to ask, it's not whether you use AI, but how. The people that aren't are probably going to fall behind from a business perspective. And what's curious is, it doesn't mean you can't write something the old fashioned way, right? You can sit down with a piece of paper in your garden and write a book longhand if you want to. And if that's the way that your creativity works, then absolutely do that. And if you want to embrace the tools and learn how to use them in a way that supports that thinking process, then do that too. So I tend to be in the latter camp, and I tend to use it mostly as a thinking partner. So I like the process of going, right, I want to write a book about resilience. What's all the things that I know about resilience? How does this all fit together? What have I read about it? What do I know? What questions do I have? What are the conversations that are coming up with my clients? And how can I weave the answers to those questions into the book? And then with that, I can use AI to say, right, here's a semi-structure that I've put together for this book I want to write. What do you think? What's great about it? What needs work? What gaps are there? What am I missing? And then it will give me a report that I can say, oh, actually, yeah, that's a great idea. Why didn't I think of that? Oh, that would go in this section. Or, oh, no, I don't agree with that. That's no good. So I tend to use it in that way at an early stage. Research is brilliant. So one of my favorite prompts is, here is a topic that I'm writing about. Find me unusual research articles or books that I might not have come across. Because again, otherwise you might as well just Google it, right? You want something a bit different. And then for copy editing, I mean, who doesn't love an AI assisted tool to help you work out where commas go, right? Like, I don't know. So I tend to use it back and forth. But with Amazon now, you have to declare the extent that you have used AI with your book. Yeah. So I think this would have come in since you published your
Yeah,
last
yeah,
book.
because I was pre-AI, so I didn't
Yeah.
have that option.
So I use it to support the editing and the thinking process, but the words are mine. And you can tell that the words are mine because they sound like me.
Yeah.
And that at the moment is the tell. That said, there are writers who are using AI tools to do the majority of the work for them, and people can't tell because they're that good at using the tool. So that's a different skill to me.
Yeah. Okay.
Ultimately, the reader's going to decide. And I think that's the really important thing is if someone's to say to me, have you used AI to write this book? I would say no. If I if I had, I would say yes. And if they didn't want to read it because of that, then that's their choice as a consumer. So I think that declaration is really important and the honesty
Yeah.
around that.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good point to make. So I'm assuming that sort of all the stuff that we've been talking about is covered in your Coach Right 90. Launching
Absolutely.
May. I'll keep saying that.
Oh,
Launching
thank
May.
you.
And which I will have a link to for people who want to discover a little bit more or have to sign up to go and find that information. But can you sort of talk us through the journey someone would experience by joining you in Coach Right?
Yeah. So it's a small group program.
Mm.
So it's part coaching, part mentoring, because obviously you can't switch the coaching bit off once you've got that hat. But you know, purist coaches would be like, but you tell us the answers sometimes. I guess I do. So it's a little bit of both. We do fortnightly calls where we talk about the subjects of the day. So at the beginning of the program, it's quite often, as we've just said, who's our ideal reader, who is what's the idea we're going to focus on, what's the structure of the book, so on and so forth, and we can kind of shape that together in those sessions. We have what I found is that there are three key topics that come up time and time again. So I do deep dives into those. So one's mindset. Everybody talks about finding time to write is always the biggest problem for everybody is how do we fit it in? How do we keep going when it feels like it's a bit tough and life gets in the way? So we talk about that. We talk about the editing process, and we do kind of a workshop on people's writing so that can set them up for the editing stage of the process. And then we go into the publication so that they've got the information that they need around, okay, so what does Amazon look like behind the scenes? And actually, how do you choose your categories and, you know, all that sexy stuff so that people are equipped. And the idea is by the end of 90 days, you've got your first draft or there and thereabouts to take and the information that you need to take you forward to publication.
Yeah, awesome. So it really is from start to finish, kind of.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
much so.
How long does it last, the Coach Right?
90 days.
90 days, closing
Hence
the
in the
title.
name.
Closing the
Yeah, yeah,
title.
yeah.
So that's pretty. So for someone who, my other half started writing a book many, many, many years ago, and something you've probably come across with a lot of people is he then kind of got stuck and
Yeah.
shelved it.
Yeah.
And he actually ended up, and this is years and years and years ago, he actually ended up dropping a ton of cash on getting someone to come in and make him finish writing it.
Yeah.
So 90 days start to finish.
Yeah. I mean, and I do one-to-one with people if they need that
Yeah.
one-to-one support. Obviously, I've got that kind of VIP option too. But for
Yeah.
most people, 90 days doesn't feel too onerous.
Mm.
Actually, if you break it down to write, let's say 40, 50,000 words in 90 days is probably about 700 words a day. So it's not actually that much when you
Yeah.
break it down into that sense. But the secret sauce is we do 3 write together sessions a week. So 3 mornings a week. We jump on a Teams call, everybody's mutes themselves and we just write. And you were talking about when you were getting into flow writing,
Yeah.
I set an alarm and oh my goodness, I jump every morning. And then when I come off mute to tell everyone they're done, everyone's like, and that's where the words happen. So they know that if they come to those 3 sessions a week and they do no other writing, they're probably going to get 2,500, 3,000 words a week without even trying.
That's really awesome. What a great idea. Because that I'm sort of feeling another question lining up here is how how you often hear authors talking about writer's block.
Mm.
So first off, is that something you've experienced, and how do you if you haven't, I mean, the second part will be null and void, but how would you advise someone else to get over writer's block?
Yeah, it's one of those, is it procrastination or is it a real
Mm.
thing type question, isn't it? Because sometimes people say, but plumbers don't get plumber's block, right? They just
They unblock.
they unblock. Yeah, it's literally what they do for a living. But it's like if you turn up at your computer at the time at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning, and the muse knows that you're always there at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning, the muse is always going to be there. And sometimes you can write yourself into a corner, and
Mm,
actually the work isn't at the keyboard. The work is go for a walk and unpick what where you're stuck.
interesting.
So it's kind of a little bit of both, I would say. With non-fiction in particular, having a semi-structure really helps avoid those blockages, because by definition it's a little bit like people that have written courses. You've got the beginning, you've got the middle, you've got the end, and it's got a natural flow. And with that sort of semi-structure, you're like, all right, I'm going to talk about these 3 ideas in this chapter, so you sort of know what you're saying already. You're not kind of coming up against a blank space where you're not sure what you're talking about, because actually you've already scoped it out. So it tends not to happen quite as frequently. But if it does, go for a walk, write a different chapter, come back to it later, let your unconscious mind like it's
Hang on a
magic.
sec. You can write a different chapter. You don't have
No,
to.
you don't have to write in
Oh
order.
my.
I know, right? Revolutionary.
Helen, love, I know you've written books.
I
Tell
have.
me about your books. Where could people find your books as well?
So my books are wherever you buy your books. So I made a choice we call it being wide, which basically means you can buy it in all of the retailers. So Amazon, Kobo, you can request my books in libraries if you like to, because again, it's quite nice to make books available for people. Different formats, different countries. Yeah, wherever you buy your books.
Yeah, awesome stuff. And what are some of the titles of your books if people are interested in learning a little bit more?
Absolutely. So the most recent title for non-fiction was called People Who Pivot, which is all about career change, as we've said.
Nice.
And the most recent fiction is actually under a pen name called Jodie Darby, and that is The Murder at Kendrick Manor. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to returning to fiction very soon.
Oh, love that. Love that. So, Helen, my lovely, that's how people can find your books. If they wanted to reach out to you or to follow you or to get onto your email list to learn, because you have some really lovely, informative emails coming through, how would they do that?
Absolutely. So the easiest place to find me, if you're looking for writing services, is Coach Write website, which is coachwrite.co.uk. There's a sign up for the weekly reflections email that is, like you say, just tips and
Mm.
stuff to inspire people. And I'm most active on LinkedIn, which is O'Neill Helen, and O'Neill is ONEILL. And if you're interested in Coach Write 90, again, website coachwrite.co.uk/Coach Write 90.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. And I will scatter links with abandon throughout around this video. So that's awesome. So Helen, my lovely, if you could leave everyone with a top tip, what would your top tip be?
Yes. So the number one myth that I come across is for newer writers is they think it's a solitary um, thing to be doing.
Mm,
Whereas actually, what I've learned through the years is that if you can surround yourself with other writers and other people that are on a similar journey, community is the thing that carries you through. So, as we were saying, those write together sessions work because everybody comes up and supports each other. If you tell people that you're writing a book, you will find other people that are writing a book too, and you can support each other. The independent author community is a very welcoming space to be in, and it's great because there's no competition there, because everyone loves books and it takes a while to write a book, so you want other people to write books too so you can read them.
yeah,
So yeah, I would say find your tribe.
yeah, nice. Awesome stuff. And just something that's just popped into my head because I have a client I'm definitely going to be telling her about you. Um, she's always sort of, oh, I want to write a book, I want to write a book. Um, with Coach Write 90, does it have to be fiction or non-fiction, or could people come and do either?
They can do either. Most do non-fiction because they're coaches and they want to write nonfiction. But I have someone currently that's writing both.
Yeah.
And I've written both, so that, and the process is the same. It's so it doesn't really make that much difference. They can do both.
That's brilliant. Awesome stuff. Helen, my lovely, thank you ever so much for your time today. It's so, I remember speaking to you in December. It's like, oh my God, we've got to get this.
Yes. And it came around so quickly in a good way.
That's been really, really interesting. Thank you ever so much. So again, thanks to Helen O'Neill. I will drop links on how you can find her and ask her questions and join her email list and join her program, which sounds absolutely phenomenal. And thank you so much for listening and watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Helen, thank you once again.
Thank you for having me.